Welcome back, man. This is the final replay compilation from that Diariva CEO health run. We zoomed through myths on weight gain with age, exercise, fasting hacks, stress hormones, and then breath, oxygen. Wild stuff. The exercise doesn't make you lose weight bit is going to trigger gym bros in 4K. Yeah, but I get why he says it. Calorie burn sounds magical until you see how hunger rebounds. The funniest part is the confidence. Like, exercise is great, but not for weight loss, bro, pick one. The nuance he's aiming at is that weight loss is diet-driven, and exercise mostly helps maintenance and health, which is basically the don't blame your treadmill doctrine. But do you buy the governments and food companies' funded exercise research conspiracy angle? I don't fully buy it, but incentives are real. Industry always nudges research toward what helps the bottom line. He's got a point that sugar and ultra-processed food are way more politically inconvenient than a "move more" headline. And then he flips to artificial sweeteners being not inert, which makes intuitive sense to me. Because if sweet taste keeps training cravings, replacing sugar with diet soda might just keep the loop running. Still, I hate the certainty vibe. Gut microbes are complex, and the evidence won't all land the same way for everyone. He basically says, your no-sugar version still hijacks your physiology, which is annoying but probably directionally true. Okay, but the fasting segment, he went full protocol, 12-16 hours, then 17 to 72 for autophagy stuff, plus gut reset and dopamine resets. I loved how he framed it as breaking cycles, sugar cravings, dopamine habits, and microbiome chaos. I'm cautious with the 36 hours belly fat focus and 48 hours dopamine reset labels, though. Belly fat focus sounds like a video game quest. But there's a real principle underneath. Fasting changes signaling, appetite timing, and sometimes improves diet adherence. Translation. Fasting works partly because it removes friction and reduces the constant snack options. And then the gut reset angle, like doing 24 hours to reset digestion, seems plausible as a behavioral reset more than a magic enzyme event. Right, it might be less instant gut reboot and more stop feeding the system the same way for a day. The dopamine reset one is my favorite framing because cravings are basically learned behavior plus biochemistry. It's like telling your brain, you don't get dessert on demand today, relax. Then he goes from food to cortisol, stress-causing belly fat that won't budge even if you diet and train. That part is actually relatable. Some people do everything right and still carry weight around the midsection. But the causal story is tricky. Cortisol can be involved, yet genetics, sleep, insulin sensitivity, and total energy still matter. He also said stress cardiology hits, heart attacks without classic risk factors linked to chronic stress cascades. And then he makes it extra wild with stress is contagious, like we're all sharing vibes through cortisol. Bro compared leadership stress to a system where the senior guy basically loads the room with threat chemistry. Which is hilarious, but also, managers really do change how tense an entire office feels. The menstrual synchrony explanation was a lot. He connected it to pheromones, hormone particles, and hierarchy. I'll be honest, I don't want to defend every biological claim there, but the takeaway is the same. Bodies communicate, not just minds. Even if the mechanism is imperfect, the observation stands. People in a group influence each other physiologically via stress, sleep, and behavior. Then we hit the happiness equation, and it was surprisingly mathy and calm after all the physiology noise. I liked the framing. Happiness equals events matching or beating expectations, not the event itself. Rain makes you happy because it ruins the plan is such a petty, accurate brain move. Also explains why people can love the ocean, but hate the same view with muted sound. Expectations rewrite everything. The 6 grand illusions and 7 blind spots part felt like a philosophy DLC pack. Still, the practical angle is good. You can't control outcomes, but you can control your comparisons and your response. That's where the stress conversation connects back to happiness. Your brain sees threat, then updates expectations, then spirals. Okay, and then the breathwork oxygen section. This is where he goes superhuman mode with oxygen tension and first light. The no human wakes up laughing from deep sleep line is absurdly confident, but the core idea, oxygen state affects mood, grabs you. I don't know about that specific claim, but deep breathing can change CO2 tolerance, alertness, and perception fast. He also mentions 3 rounds of 30 deep breaths like a Wim Hof-style setup. People should be careful with hyperventilation risks. Yeah, tingly fingers and lightheaded is good is not exactly a safety checklist, even if it's common in breath protocols. I'm all for simple, accessible tools, but I want the safety framing, not just the intensity framing. And the earth contact plus first 45 minutes of morning light is a pretty grounded habit suggestion, even if the details get spicy. What about the oxygen concentrator story? 95% oxygen, bag refills, then exercise cycles. That's a whole different universe. That seems risky and unnecessary for most people, and superhuman is marketing language, not medicine. I did love the, what if you can't buy the Hypermax concession? Just do breathwork, then first light. Basically, expensive toys optional, habits mandatory, finally a reasonable health stance. Also, the cold plunge part. He argues benefits are more about cold shock proteins than anti-inflammation myths. The mood effect explanation, oxygen transfer to the brain, again might be oversimplified, but cold exposure can absolutely shift alertness. Cold water as a mood switch is undefeated for the people who do it consistently. And if anyone thinks it melts away belly fat instantly, he at least tries to keep it grounded. It's a stress physiology lever. By the end, what I actually take away is the through line. Stop believing in single hacks. Chase systems, diet, stress, sleep, and habits. And don't forget the mind layer. Your expectations and your comparisons steer how your body behaves too. All right, that's our wrap for this 2-part compilation. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll see you in the next one. Welcome back. This is the final leg. Weight myths, stress physiology, and those oxygen breath hacks all mashed together. The through line is systems over single tricks. Diet, sleep, stress, and habits driving everything. Okay, first I need to address the oxygen equals absence of disease claim. That sounds poetic, but also like my science teacher would throw a chair. But I get what he's trying to point at. How you change your state, you change your body. Still, the part where he says laughter literally needs oxidative state. Bro. People wake up laughing all the time unless your house runs on insufficient oxygen policies. Fair though, breath work is accessible, cheap, and many people underdose it completely. The practical bit I liked was his Wim Hof-style rounds. Start small, progress only if you feel fine. The tingly fingers and heat cues, those are real sensations people report with hyperventilation. Still, I hate the vibe where it turns into do extreme, become superhuman. Like you're one lightheaded moment away from turning wellness into ambulance speedrun. And the oxygen concentrator thing, buying a machine to do exercise sounds like wellness with a credit limit. Only 10 minutes while you sprint 30 seconds like it's a video game quest. I'm not saying it can't help, just that it's not a universal lever, it's a niche tool. Red light therapy bed after that, too. This man is basically turning a home into a biohacking mall. But breath, earth contact, and early sunlight, that part is at least aligned with circadian biology. First light resetting rhythm makes more sense than oxygen mask for enlightenment. Then the episode flips into Tim Spector and exercise for weight loss myths, and I felt my brain unclench. Because the just work out more crowd always acts like hunger magically disappears. Your parents lied, your gym told a bedtime story, and your calendar believed it. The key claim: exercise alone rarely causes weight loss, but diet change and maintenance with exercise works. That matches what most long-term studies show. Energy balance is hard, and exercise compensates by appetite changes. And then he goes full conspiracy light about funding. Food companies sponsoring research around exercise. I'll push back a bit. Bias can exist, but the data on ultra-processed foods is also pretty compelling. Still, the critique that calories in out becomes a shield for selling sugary drinks, that's painfully plausible. The diet soda story was the dagger, though. Same brands, no sugar, and nothing changes on the scale. He basically says the weight and metabolic stuff doesn't improve, except maybe dentist visits. So congratulations, you traded cavities for still being a snack goblin. The gut microbiome angle is the big one. Sweeteners aren't inert, and they can shift microbes. But even if sweeteners affect gut, the magnitude for every person is probably not identical. Either way, the practical takeaway is boring. Reduce ultra-processed stuff and added sweetness. I like how the fasting conversation in the compilation reframed it too. Fasting as a lever to break craving cycles. Not fasting to be spiritual, but fasting to interrupt behavior loops. Sugar desire, dopamine seeking, repeat. The variety was wild. 12 to 16 hours, then autophagy windows, then 24-hour gut reset, then a belly fat focus. And then 48-hour dopamine reset like your brain has a factory default button. But I'll admit, the psychological effect of resetting routines can be real, even if the naming is dramatic. Like when you do a weekend of no sweets, suddenly your brain stops screaming for dessert like a toddler. And once cravings calm down, people can actually implement the diet fundamentals: protein, fiber, and less added sugar. The fundamentals always look lame until they work. Then the episode goes super mind-body with that stress cortisol story. The trading floor heart attack example is intense, like stress physically kills before it even feels like stress. He's basically arguing chronic cortisol pushes inflammation and vascular risk even without classic risk factors. I don't want to oversell cortisol as the only villain, but the idea that stress creates belly fat resistance is compelling. Also, the bunch of executives lift their shirt reveal, yeah, that's the most relatable corporate pathology I've heard. The stress contagion part was actually interesting. Drained energy when you leave a room. That matches my lived experience. Some people have an atmosphere that alters your physiology. And he ties it to hierarchy, saying leaders' stress impacts others more because the leader sets the emotional climate. CEOs controlling cortisol and turning it into organizational weather. Great. My job description now includes barometric pressure. But I get the point. Management is not just spreadsheets, it's physiology and attention. That segues into his happiness equation and the brain expectation comparison model. I love how he uses rain. Rain doesn't cause happiness, your expectation does. It's basically, happiness is event minus expectation, plus how hard your brain is colorizing reality. The 6 grand illusions and blind spots part is kind of heavy, but the core insight is simple. If your brain is trained to hunt wrongness, it will constantly rewrite the story so it feels urgent. And once you rewrite the story, your body follows. Stress hormones, attention, appetite, sleep, all tied together. So the conspiracy about food companies and the conspiracy about your brain's expectations are both conspiracies. One is real-world lobbying, the other is your inner algorithm running in the background. By the end, I'm left with this. Don't chase oxygen miracles or belly fat fasts. Chase consistent systems. Diet that limits added sugar, protein, and fiber targets. Exercise for health, not as the sole weight loss strategy. Then stress management, sleep, sunlight, and breath work as tools to shift your baseline. Basically, expensive toys optional, habits mandatory. Finally, a reasonable health stance. And the mind layer matters too. Expectations and comparisons steer behavior, which steers physiology. All right. That's our wrap for this 2-part compilation. Thanks for hanging in, and we'll see you in the next one. Welcome back, man. This finale is basically myths versus mechanisms across weight, fasting, and stress. We bounce between exercise doesn't melt fat, added sugar is a trap, and then oxygen breath work takes the mic. And the funniest part is how all of it secretly points to the same baseline habits. I loved the line that anger can wake you up, but laughter needs an oxidative state. That sounds poetic as hell. Scientifically, are we sure we're not overfitting biology into vibes? Because I can wake up laughing from a notification like a psychopath. Okay, fine. Maybe your phone is oxygenated entertainment. Still, the practical takeaway was daily accessible breathwork, sunlight, and grounding. 3 rounds of obnoxiously deep breaths, pull the belly button toward the wall. Very cult leader energy. But honestly, even if the neuroscience is hand-wavy, the ritual is consistent and calming. And that ties back to the stress episode. Cortisol isn't just feel bad, it's inflammation and belly fat logic. The belly fat that won't shift even when you eat clean. That sounded painfully familiar. I'm always suspicious of anyone claiming one hormone explains everything around aging and weight. Yet the stress contagion framing is interesting. How you walk into a room drained after a specific person. The alpha female menstrual syncing part is where my brain went full popcorn mode. Like, great, so now hierarchy affects our calendar and my cortisol hates me. But I get the point. Leadership stress does leak through the system. The mechanism they used, threat perception, receptors thinking survival is imminent, felt coherent. That's actually where the episode connected to the happiness equation stuff. Expectations minus events. Because if your brain's baseline is life should be different, then physiology keeps getting dragged around. Your brain runs the update, your body pays the subscription cost. Exactly, and then you try to fix it with a supplement stack and you're still stressed. Let's talk exercise and weight loss. Because the claim was wild. Exercise doesn't help weight loss. What they said made sense directionally. It's overstated as a standalone fat loss strategy. The argument was hunger increases after, metabolism compensation, and evolution fighting your deficit. So you go for a walk, your body goes, cool, now feed me extra because we learned from cavemen. Honestly, evolution is the most petty calorie accountant on Earth. But I still want to push back slightly. Exercise can change appetite, preferences, insulin sensitivity, sometimes indirectly. So doesn't help at all is too absolute, even if not the main lever is true. The best version of the stance is, diet drives fat loss, exercise helps health and weight maintenance. And the episode basically hammered diet changed, then exercise supports keeping it off. Then we zoom into the sugar war. No sugar sodas won't save you, and it sounded unfairly accurate. They implied artificial sweeteners can still mess with gut microbes and even spike blood sugar in studies. I'm not convinced about every detail, but the not inert point is believable. The gut microbiome angle is what makes it stick, because you're not just counting calories anymore. Calorie counting is the comfy blanket of modern nutrition until your microbiome laughs at it. 1 calorie, 0 calorie on the can. Meanwhile, your body is like, prove it. They also accused governments and food lobbies of pushing the exercise solves obesity storyline. I do buy there's incentive distortion in research funding, but the conspiracy explains everything instinct is dangerous. Still, it's an important provocation. Why don't we hear enough about sugary drinks and ultra-processed foods? Also, the teeth comment, diet soda means fewer fillings like, yeah, small mercy. The oxygen breathwork section was the other extreme. Hypermax concentrators, 95% O2, exercise cycles. 10 minutes, cycle, sprint cycle, then red light therapy bed. Bro, that's a sci-fi gym membership. Expensive toys optional, habits mandatory, is basically the whole vibe of both parts. And I like that the episode said, if you don't have the machine, breathwork and first light still get you far. That's the part I can actually do tomorrow morning. Sit on Earth, breathe, and get the first light. The circadian reset angle, first 45 minutes, first light with less damaging rays, felt like a clean, actionable rule. I wonder how much the outcome is from oxygen tension versus just structured attention and reduced stress in the morning. My brain keeps trying to separate plausible biology from narrative certainty. But regardless, the breathing plus sunlight combo is hard to argue with as a health habit. Cold water plunges also came with a reframing. Anti-inflammatory is only a small slice. Cold shock proteins is the hero. Reserve proteins in your liver dumped into your bloodstream is a sentence that should be illegal. Celsius conversion? Who needs that when you're spiritually ready for suffering? The mood explanation, oxygen rush to the brain like deep sleep, again sounds metaphorically powerful. I'm still cautious, but if the practice makes people calmer and more resilient, I'm not mad. Then we end on the deepest theme, happiness as predictable math, events versus expectations. That rain makes you happy when it matches your plan example was actually pretty elegant. So instead of chasing pleasure, you chase alignment with your own expectations. Which means you can't just install happiness like a workout app. And the 6 grand illusions and 7 blind spots, those are basically bias traps in different outfits. Blur the event, exaggerate the threat, and suddenly your brain rewrites the past. That also loops back to weight and stress. If your baseline expectation is danger, your body behaves like it. And then you blame your genes, your metabolism, your age, while your stress is doing overtime. By the end, it felt like the compilation is saying, fix the inputs you control, diet, sleep, stress, light, movement. And don't worship single hacks like belly fat fasting or oxygen miracles forever. Hacks are fireworks. Systems are the electricity bill you actually pay. If there's one rule that survives all segments, it's consistency over theatrics. All right, that's our wrap for this two-part compilation. Thanks for hanging in, and we'll see you in the next one. Welcome back, man. And yeah, this is the final episode of the compilation. We bounce between myths about weight gain, fasting protocols, oxygen breath hype, and stress-driven fat. The theme is basically stop blaming age, start fixing the inputs your body actually reads. But first, the oxygen stuff. 95% oxygen, breathwork, red light, earth contact. Bro really said, you can become superhuman, like it's an app update. I swear every biohack sentence has a hidden consult your cult leader at the end. Still, I get why people latch onto it because it feels like control, instant control. And then the episode immediately smacks you with the stress cortisol mechanism. Cortisol causing inflammation and, apparently, stubborn belly fat that won't shift. Which is funny because everyone loves to blame my genetics right there. Like you loosen the belt and call it age when the body's running an alarm system. The stress contagion part was wild, though. Leadership stress spreads physiologically. That framing lands because CEOs are literally in everyone's nervous system all day. And the CFOs are like, I won't show emotion, as if biology cares about their PR strategy. Exactly. Your face can be poker, your cortisol can't do acting lessons. I do want to push back on the confidence level of some claims, like laughing requires oxygen. That one sounded like a TED Talk that drank its own Kool-Aid. But the underlying point, state changes, neurotransmitters, oxygenation, mood, sure, that's plausible. I'm okay with breathing plus light plus movement improves regulation, even if the mechanistic story gets spicy. And honestly, the breath protocol is at least actionable. Rounds of deep breaths, controlled holds, and easing into it. The lighthearted vibe made it feel safe, but breath holds can be intense for beginners. So yeah, maybe don't treat your brain like a stunt demo reel. What I liked more was how it ties to the boring fundamentals. Sunlight first light, circadian rhythm reset. That part actually felt grounded. Morning light, earth contact, consistency. Then we get the other big myth. Exercise alone will make you lose weight. The episode basically said, no, long-term studies show exercise is wildly overhyped for weight loss. And I felt attacked, because I've personally used, I worked out therefore calories don't matter logic. But the counterpoint offered was sensible. Exercise helps prevent regain if diet is corrected. That matches real life. People who nail protein and fiber still benefit from training, but training isn't a substitute for diet. Yet gym posters still promise burn belly fat, like fat is just a cursor you click away. And then fasting shows up like the magic wand again, 12, 16, 17, 72, 24, 36, even 48 hours for a dopamine reset. I love the marketing energy, but the real question is, does it change behavior or just hunger drama? The dopamine cycling angle, breaking sugar cravings, sounds reasonable, but the brain is not a spreadsheet. Still, fasting can reduce total intake and alter cues, which can genuinely help people stop the I need it now loop. The compilation kept hinting that you're not fasting to impress autophagy Twitter. You're fasting to change inputs. Also, gut reset is such a tempting phrase because it sounds like a factory reset for your microbiome. But it's probably more nuanced. Diet diversity, fiber, time, and consistent patterns matter more than the label. And then resistance training comes back as the quiet king, muscle mass as the real health aging lever. That's the part I kept agreeing with, even when the protocol talk got loud. Because muscle is just metabolic resilience, strength, insulin sensitivity, confidence, you feel it everywhere. What I'm less comfortable with is the calorie demon story blaming entire industries for research direction. Like, sure, lobbying exists, but the universe doesn't run on one villain team. But the practical takeaway still holds. Sugary, ultra-processed stuff makes weight management harder for many people. And the diet soda segment, no real difference in weight, that hits hard because everyone uses those as permission slips. They basically argued artificial sweeteners aren't inert. They affect gut microbes and cravings. I'll say this carefully. Individuals vary, but the it's totally harmless certainty is definitely suspect. Because if it were truly harmless, your cravings wouldn't do jazz improvisation at 11:47 p.m. And then the episode zooms way out into the mind-body loop. Expectations versus events equals happiness. That happiness equation bit, events compared to expectations, connects back to stress too. Because if your brain expects threat, it will interpret meetings, messages, and body signals as danger. And then cortisol shows up like an unpaid intern that never leaves. So you start treating belly fat like a mystery instead of a signal from chronic threat calibration. That's the real synthesis. Biology reads your mental state, and your habits feed your biology back. The menstrual synchronization story was definitely a curveball tangent. But even if the details are debated, the broader point about social environment shaping physiology is hard to ignore. Then the outro-ish part about control illusions and blind spots, control and fear messing with happiness. That tied the whole compilation together, honestly. Stop trying to micromanage reality and start managing what you can. Like you can't control entropy, but you can control sleep schedule and food environment. And that's why the series ending feels consistent. Systems beat theatrics. So yeah, if you want one rule to survive all segments, it's consistency over fireworks. Breathing might be powerful, fasting might help, but the real upgrade is your baseline routine. All right, that's our wrap for this two-part compilation. Thanks for hanging in, and we'll see you in the next one. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 2 of 2 is basically a hits mix of health myth-busting. We go from oxygen and breath work to why exercise barely moves weight, to stress, cortisol, and the happiness math. I swear the compilation had 3 modes: breathe like a maniac, eat like an adult, and stop being stressed. The oxygen stuff is where my brain started side-eyeing so hard it almost wore sunglasses. Like, is the point really 95% oxygen makes you superhuman? Or is it just intense focus plus breathing? Also the whole no human is woken up laughing because you need oxidative state line. Come on. But I'll admit the breathwork protocol sounds hilariously simple to try. 3 rounds, 30 deep breaths, hold the exhale, get tingly fingers. People are basically speed-running nervous system training. Still, I worry about if you get lightheaded, it's good, being a dangerous instruction for beginners. But even if the superhuman claims are marketing-y, the access piece is real. Breathwork is free and doable daily. And the contact the earth part, look, I'm not disputing vibes, I'm just disputing the physics language. Then first light exposure, getting morning sunlight, now that's the part I can fully buy. Circadian rhythm reset is boring, which means it's probably true. What really stole their show for me, though, was the exercise weight argument. Because I've heard exercise doesn't cause weight loss so many times, but it always sounded like someone coping. Here the framing was, exercise helps health, mood, heart, but weight loss needs diet changes, otherwise the body compensates. You go for a walk and build hunger is exactly what my brain does like a damn automaton. The cave evolution explanation was oddly convincing. Evolution is like, sure, run, now eat more. Still, I don't fully accept the exercise doesn't help absolutism. There are maintenance and body composition edges. But I agree with the correction. Don't treat workouts like a magic eraser for a bad diet. The fasting segments earlier in the series made it even clearer. If you want fat loss, you need a lever on energy balance and cravings. And cravings got connected to dopamine cycles. So the plan isn't just burn calories, it's stop the sugar demand loop. The names were wild too. Autophagy, gut reset, belly fat focus, dopamine reset. Sounds like boss levels in a video game. Like, congratulations, you survived 48 hours, now your neurons respect you again. Whether every mechanism is perfectly named or not, the behavioral truth is, ultra-processed stuff and sugar hijack appetite regulation. I'm also not fully aligned with the exercise research is sponsored to protect sugary ultra-processed foods conspiracy flavor. But I do like the point that incentives shape what gets studied, and that can quietly skew public beliefs. Even the diet soda part was interesting. Switching from full sugar to diet doesn't necessarily produce weight loss, and gut microbes might be involved. I had that moment of, oh no, I've been doing the no-sugar version, like it's penance. Turns out the label might be less powerful than the craving system you trained. So instead of 0 calories, the smarter move is reducing overall sweetness intensity and leaning into more bitter or fermented flavors. That sounds annoyingly doable, which means I might actually try it. Then we pivoted into brain-body connection and stress hormones. And that's where everything started clicking together. Cortisol acting like a background alarm that never turns off. Then inflammation and belly fat becomes the downstream story. The t-shirt lifting scene from Finance Clients was so vivid I almost believed it was a documentary. But again, I like the translation. If your stress baseline is high, fat loss gets harder, regardless of the exact causal pathway. And the wild stress contagion hierarchy thing, like you leave a room drained and that person is the one with leverage. It's basically organizational physiology. Leaders don't just talk stress, they broadcast it through cortisol vibes. The happiness equation part was the final glue. Events compared to expectations and blind spots messing up the comparison. I loved the rain example because it makes happiness feel like a controllable variable instead of a lottery. And the illusion of control critique was kind of brutal but freeing. Entropy is undefeated. So the consistent theme across the whole compilation is stop chasing hacks as if they override fundamentals. You can try breath work, fasting, cold exposure, sunlight, cool. But the real lever is your baseline routine and environment. Systems beat theatrics, and your body is the system. If I had to compress this episode into one line, it's manage what moves your biology day after day. Not buy an oxygen bag, not hero diet, not macro perfection, just consistent inputs. All right, that's our wrap for this 2-part compilation. Thanks for sticking with me through all the myths and the momentum. We'll catch you on the next one. Same energy, less hype, more habits.